Hi my friends, and welcome back to our list on the 20 things you never knew about Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country, Part 2. Number 10. Star Trek The Academy script and HARVE BENNETT. HARVE BENNETT successfully guided the franchise from Star Trek II to Star Trek IV, and perhaps less successfully through Star Trek V. He wrote a treatment for a potential sixth film that has never truly died. The idea was Star Trek The Academy years. It was set at a time when the Federation was less enlightened than it would become. Spock would be the victim of racial bullying at the Academy, an idea anathema to the established depiction of Star Trek. James Doohan recalled that after negative reception from the core cast, Gene Roddenberry and the fans, Bennett's script was scrapped. This would be the end of his involvement with the franchise. Bennett claimed that he was offered a lot of money to rewrite the script and change it up, but he was committed to his idea about Star Trek The Academy years. He would go on to repitch it over the years, though he conceded that when Star Trek 09 was released, the franchise had truly moved beyond his vision. Number 9. The return of Nicholas Meyer and militarism in Star Trek. When Nicholas Meyer was originally approached about being a part of the production on Star Trek VI, he was not aware that his name would be in the hat for directing. He knew that he was being asked to write a script, though initially he had no ideas of what to do. Once Leonard Nimoy pitched the idea of the wall coming down in space, Meyer jumped at the idea of including a Chernobyl reference in the beginning. He then went on to work on the story with his friend Denny Martin Flynn, with whom he collaborated via email. In the end, the story credits would go to Meyer, Flynn, Nimoy, Mark Rosenthal, and Lawrence Connor, though the latter two's ideas were not used in the final film. Meyer was then approached about directing. Part of the reason for this was appeasement. There were discussions about Nimoy taking the director's chair again, as Star Trek IV had been such a success. This could have drawn ire from William Shatner and the favoured nations clause that was still present in the contracts of both. Meyer was hired to helm the project, and the war with Gene Roddenberry began in earnest. Number 8. Let's talk about the Roddenberry in the room. Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek along with Gene L. Coon, died shortly after viewing the final cut of Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country. Despite having no real creative control over the franchise at that point, Roddenberry still held enough swing to ensure that he could be present and present notes during the scripting process. He and Meyer would not part on good terms. Roddenberry hated the script from start to finish, using his weight to force a line-by-line reading, battling Meyer every step of the way. Similar to his problems with Star Trek II, he didn't like how militaristic the film was, nor could he reconcile with the bigotry that the Federation characters showed toward the Klingons. Meyer fought back, claiming that he had seen nothing in Star Trek to convince him that bigotry would have simply vanished by the 23rd century. He also vehemently opposed Roddenberry's criticisms of the proposed villainous turn by Saavik, bluntly stating that it was he, Meyer, who had created that character, and that he would do as he damn well pleased. In the end, all of Roddenberry's notes were tossed out. He died shortly after this meeting, which left Meyer regretting the way that they had ended things. Number 7. Trek and the City. Kim Cattrall had auditioned for the role of Saavik when The Wrath of Khan was in production, losing the part to Kirstie Alley. When Meyer returned to direct Star Trek VI, Alley was approached to reprise the role, but she was unavailable. Losing Alley led to the loss of Saavik. Robin Curtis was not approached for a role, with Cattrall instead being offered the part of Valeris. She initially had been reluctant to appear, as she did not want to be the third actor to play the same role, but with those fears assuaged, she chose the name Eris for her character, with the Val added later to vulcanize it. Cattrall credited Leonard Nimoy with helping her understand the part and understanding Vulcans in general. Once filming was completed, she kept a couple of mementos. Her headband, one of Valeris' signature pieces of costume, went home with her at the end of the shoot, so too did every pair of ears that she was assigned throughout the shoot. Number 6. The show trial and the Cuban Missile Crisis. The trial of Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy is one of the tensest scenes in the film. Quite frankly, this was to be the last film starring the original series crew. Was Meyer above having them executed to keep the costs down? Well, apparently yes, thankfully. The scene begins in Klingon, with Kirk and McCoy holding translators to their ears. It then switches to English for the ease of the audience, but in-universe still features the characters speaking in their own tongues. General Chang, serving as prosecutor, gets increasingly riled before spitting a question at Kirk and demanding he answer without waiting for the translation. The scene parallels the exchange between Adlai Stevenson and Valerian Zorin at the UN during the Cuban Missile Crisis. As tensions rose in the room, Stevenson demanded to know if there was in fact nuclear missiles present on the island of Cuba, which had been denied by Zorin. He shouted at him to answer yes or no without waiting for translation. Zorin coolly answered that he would not be spoken to as though being commanded by opposing counsel, and he would answer in due course. He then implied again that there were no missiles, only for photos taken by a U-2 rocket flying overhead confirming their presence on the island. Number 5. Doesn't everything look a little familiar? Money was tight while making Star Trek VI, perhaps more so than any previous production. Shatner, Nimoy and Meyer all agreed to lower salaries simply to get the film made, and while there was a hard and fast rule before production began, the budget could not, even by $1, exceed that of Star Trek V. The budget for The Final Frontier had ended up at $33 million. That film's negative reception almost killed the chance of another original series outing, but the head of Paramount Studios, Frank Mancuso, was a fan and didn't want their stories to end on a low note. So, how to save money. Star Trek VI was in production at the same time as The Next Generation. Many of the sets were lifted wholesale from the series. The transporter room, most of the corridors, the main engineering set, and the observation lounge were all recycled. In fact, with the lounge doubling as the executive dining hall, this resulted in a change in The Next Generation as well. A torpedo tears through the set, blasting out the ornate wall. In the series, the wall switched from the gold Enterprise models to a more drab grey background, with no explanation on screen as to why. These adjustments allowed Star Trek VI's budget to settle at $27 million, bringing it well under the bar. Number 4, build a bridge and get over it. The war over budgets actually went as far as shutting down production on Star Trek VI for several weeks. Meyer, before the $27 million figure was settled, had managed to bring the proposed budget down from $40 million to $30 million. He took this number to Paramount, who stuck to their guns. After a highly charged meeting, the film was cancelled. However, some creative studio moves got the film back in production again, though still with the slashed budget. Herman Zimmerman was brought in to help, as there was a fairly large issue that required cash to fix. There was no standing bridge set ready to use. In Star Trek IV, the bridge set of the Enterprise A was simply a redress of the motion picture bridge, while in Star Trek III, the Excelsior had its own set entirely. Star Trek V saw a new set constructed for the Enterprise, but this had been destroyed after that film wrapped production, as had the Excelsior's. A new set with movable panels and lighting was constructed, serving as both the Enterprise A and the Excelsior, with the latter's scenes being filmed first. Number 3, racism in the 23rd century. One of Gene Roddenberry's major issues with the script was the racism and bigotry that was on show against the Klingons. In this case, he was not alone. Brock Peters returned as Admiral Cartwright, having first appeared in Star Trek IV. Here, he is revealed to be one of the co-conspirators, though he tips his hand early in the movie. During the Starfleet headquarters scene, he urges the rest of the room to force the Klingons into submission rather than opening with the olive branch. Believing that they will one day become the alien trash of the galaxy, Peters struggled quite a bit with this line. Years previously, he had played the falsely accused Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird. That film's message of anti-racism and anti-prejudice were at complete odds with his character here, forcing the need for several retakes to get the scene right. William Shatner was also disturbed at the bigotry that Kirk shows in the line, "Let them die," feeling somewhat betrayed by Meyer, who had assured him it would be played far less seriously than it was delivered. Number 2, a tribute to MERRITT Buttrick. MERRITT Buttrick originated the role of David Marcus, then Admiral Kirk's son, in Star Trek II. Directed by Nicholas Meyer, in that film, he would return in Star Trek III to reprise the role, only to receive a brutal death at the hands of the Klingons. This is one of the key contributing factors to now Captain Kirk's feelings against the species as a whole. By 1989, Buttrick had developed AIDS at 29 years of age. He suffered from toxoplasmosis of the brain along with pneumonia. These were the main contributing factors to his death on the 17th of March of that year. Kirk's placement of the photograph on his nightstand is a touching tribute to the young actor, while David's death becomes one of the key plot points in the effort to incriminate Kirk in the assassination of Gorkon. At the end of the film, Azet Bohr and Kirk share a moment of understanding. "You've restored my father's faith, and you've restored my son's." Number 1, second star to the right, straight on till morning. Compared to Star Trek V, The Undiscovered Country was a roaring success. Critics and fans lauded the film, praising the blend of lighter and darker tones that the film introduces. The cast all get something to do, rather than appearing in serviceable cameos. George Takei finally gets his promotion to captain, while even Christian Slater pops along for the ride. Finally, the film was a hit, taking in nearly $100 million against that $27 million budget, effectively guaranteeing a sequel to be made. However, this truly would be the final time that the original series crew would all appear together. It would also mark the final time that DeForest Kelley and Nichelle Nichols would appear in the franchise. Star Trek VI has been hailed as a triumphant ending to that era of Star Trek. The cast sign off at the end of the film, breaking the fourth wall to smile directly at the camera before their literal signatures appear, inspired another franchise to follow suit. Avengers Endgame features the signatures of the main Avengers cast appearing on screen as the credits roll. The Russo brothers were heavily influenced by Star Trek in general, with this nod to Star Trek VI being one of the more obvious examples. Having your ideas borrowed for the highest earning film of all time? Not bad, Star Trek 6. Not bad at all. That is everything for our list on the 20 things you never knew about Star Trek 6 The Undiscovered Country. I will be the first one to say I could easily do another 20 things about this film, but what are some of the things that you wish were included? Drop it into the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and remember that you can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. You look after yourself, and whatever you do, you live long and prosper.